Information on prevention, tools for a healthy lifestyle. Make little changes to be the best you. It's all here. A podcast empowering, informing, and motivating Bermuda to live well. Bermuda Health-Abets. Everything from A to Z on healthy living. Brought to you by the Health Promotion and Wellness Office of the Department of Health in collaboration with local health partners.
Welcome to an episode of Bermuda Health-Abets, a podcast where we discuss everything from A to Z on healthy living with a mission of empowering, informing, motivating Bermuda residents to live well. I'm your host, Simone Hollis, public health nutritionist, and our guest today is Chaplain Dr. Kevin J.T. Santucci, chaplain for essential services and the Grow Eat Save facilitator. He's going to be talking to us today about food security and gardening. Chaplain, can you share a bit about yourself?
Well, good morning, and I should say good day and happy day to all of you. I am so thankful to be able to be a product of a people of which we're farmers from the very earliest inception of farming. And when you consider that, then you're considering your ancestry all the way back to Africa. I am so thankful that within this indigenous people, we are some of the most, or I should say, some of the greatest farmers on planet Earth. One of the greatest secrets ever held back, or I should say, untapped into, and that is by the indigenous people of Africa. I am so thankful also that I'm also a product of those from Europe. Yes, I'm somewhat mixed, and also of those of North America. And so within all of that, there is quite a bit of history that taps into my regime or into my DNA that makes me who I am. Thankful to be a Bermudian.
Okay. But what inspired you to study farming and become an instructor in farming? And how has it shaped your relationship with food?
Well, I was privileged, firstly, to go to a trade school. And being a part of a trade school, and that was then Robert Crawford. The school actually had many facets and opportunities for young men who was willing to put their heads to the plow to be able to learn various trades. One of those trades was rural science back in the day. Mm. And it was headed up by a gentleman by the name of Mr. Farrington, a studious man, a man who understood the importance of the earth, and he understood how to grow things. But that all said, though, I came to the school already prepared for this particular class, not realizing that in my earlier years, here it was that I was brought up among people within the Warwick area who loved the garden.
Loved to do a lot of gardening. I'm sure back in the day they were doing a lot of gardening back then, and they didn't realize that they already had that capability of actually producing their own food and having the ability of creating food security for themselves.
It was of such that the community basically cared for each other, looked out for each other.
Yes.
But also they were willing to take under their hands or under their wings, sort of speak, people, young people, particularly within the neighborhood, who were willing to learn from them. And that's anywhere from economics to farming to carpentry, masonry, and you name it. Just good old-fashioned Bermuda. That's what I call it. A community that literally cared for each other. And so I was fortunate to grow up in that time. And I remember when I went to Purvis School, in a lady by the name of Olive Trott. Interesting, when you name or call that name, many heads sort of peek up. But sitting in her class, I used to always look out of the window. And she would throw a nut and say, "Come out of that window." And funny enough that when it was time to do the work, I was fine with doing the work, but my head was out of the window, And I looked, and I always every day, for many years, all I saw was nothing but nature around me. I saw it looking down at the Warwick Pond gardens, And so all around the work pond back in those days was gardens around the entire work pond. If you can just imagine, time when they put in or start to grow that long grass which they have there now, it sort of set some things back. But back in those days, all of our marshlands were used for growing either celery, watermelon, and also more so some summer crops. They were used for those things because during the winter time, as you know, tide rises, and the tide within all of our pond areas or marsh areas rise with the tide.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. You're
Yeah.
telling me something I didn't know.
Yeah. That is part of the arable land or part of the arable side of this country that is not really talked about. But yeah, we were privileged and didn't realize how blessed we were. I should say not privileged, but fortunate. Didn't realize how fortunate we were living in such an environment among people who were willing to get behind you. Just about everyone had a garden within their yard back in those days.
Yeah.
And when you consider 50 cows coming onto the main hill where you live, which was called City Hill, 50 cows, and they were running wild, that was a norm for us. You know, and an old lady would come out by the name of Gloria Higgs, and she would shout, "Get up," you know, getting the cows back over to the paddocks. But that was a normal thing for us. We didn't complain. That was a part of farming. Farming didn't just consist of vegetables. Farming consisted of also meats.
Right.
Okay.
People had chickens,
Yes.
they had goats, they had cows.
So back to Purvis School, though. Purvis School was actually by a chicken farm. A chicken farm was our next door neighbor.
Oh, okay.
So where you have the Attrick veterinarian too, all in the backside of that was all chicken farm.
Okay.
Hundreds of chickens, and then further up we had James's chicken farms, and it was just oodles of animals and farmlands and nothing but manure.
But it's so interesting that you mentioned that people
Yeah.
had the access
Yeah.
to the same food security that we want to provide for Bermudians today. But most Bermudians, I think people in general, they know that chicken comes from an actual chicken hen and rooster, whatever. But it doesn't still resonate with everybody that food is grown or, you know, how things are done. You think you go to the grocery store and it's automatically there, like it's going to be there forever. But
Right.
the reality of it is in Bermuda, if the boat doesn't come in for 3 weeks,
Well-
it's going to be a shortage of food,
Well-
and we're going to have some problems. And there's some things going on worldwide, right
Yes.
now, and food's going to cost even more for
Well-
what it cost us. So when we think about we need to have food security for this island, and we keep stressing it. How long have we been doing this together, Chaplain, for the Grow, Eat, Save, trying to teach Bermudians how to grow?
We've been doing this since 2017.
Yeah,
And it's been wonderful. Our first class, I would never forget that class. We had about 62 students. The class has fluctuated, but all the way up to 101 students. It's been quite a bit. Coming through those classes, we have actually seen well over 900 people within the time frame to this date that have actually been a part of this here, Grow, Eat, and Save. But I just want to go back to your point, though, because gardening teaches people many, many things. And I think that my earlier training of being committed to something positive was actually during those early days of just living among the era that I lived in with the people of whom I lived with, taught me how to look out. It was a normal thing for a young boy back in my day to go by an older person's yard and to help them. It was a normal thing to, when Miss Liprin, real name now, Olive Liprin, would say to me, go down the road and pick up her husband from the bus stop who was blind. That was a real thing, coming back and to be able to spend time with the older folk who taught valuable lessons. And so sometimes we wonder, like, are we getting through with our young people? And although I wasn't all that, some people back in the day thought that I was a mischief child. They claim I wasn't rude, but I could have done better. You follow what I'm saying? And so but everything was registering. It was still registering. And as time went on, we were able to learn from these great teachers how to put these things into practice.
Right.
And so I'm so indebted to these persons. Yeah.
So when you talk about for the young people, this is going to be, I'm not going to be here forever as much as I'd like to, but we need to pass on this same type of information that we had from yesteryear, right? How are we going to pass down this knowledge and values to future generations so that they can have the opportunity to see the benefit of what they would get from it?
So when we talk about passing on knowledge, we're talking about culture, we're talking about traditions. Farming in general is a practice which is a part of the human being's life. But Bermuda itself has been a place whereby we have been made up of various diversions of persons throughout our community. And yet at the same time, how can we be able to learn from those different nationalities how to pass it on? My word to everyone today is this, is that we are a place within the Atlantic Ocean that of which growing vegetables or even food security for our own is completely different to North America. For instance, North America operates under a season of winter, spring, summer, and fall, but their winter is not like our winter. Their summer, in some places, not like our summer. Their fall is not like our fall. We are a semi-tropical area. And so we must learn ways of how to be able to grow food in a semi-tropical environment, which is completely different to Jamaica, completely different also to the Leeward Islands, and also to South America. So I've taken the time, I've been blessed to work beside some of the greatest farmers in this country. And working with some of these great farmers in this country here, some who were Portuguese, I think of Mr. Collis, Doc Collis that is, some who were European, I think of Jerry Frith, some who were part African and American, Indian, such as Mr. Gerald Woolridge, and some which were either from the Turks and Caicos Island and from Africa, like Stuart Butterfield, who was my uncle, and some who were from Turks Island, which was my great-grandfather.
You've had a lot of experience apparently with a lot of farming and the ability that you've had to share this information with everyone, including this Grow Eat Save class that we have as well.
So
and food connects us in so many different ways in how we're trying to actually get things going for the communities, for them to do more. Like when we wanted to do gardens in every parish, and how that works so much to help connect everyone in that parish to once again go back to yesteryear where it was like everybody was family. Everybody was, you actually have your parish gardening right up there in Warwick, sharing tons of food, everybody working together. Everybody doing the same thing and sharing and coming together and working in the garden. I mean, that's a great thing. And I know when you said, oh, well, I've got some extra broccoli, I've got some extra, I mean, it's everybody's garden. And how food connects us is like so important. Can you imagine if we can have that, and how much more security? And I know even if we had these parish gardens, we would have people producing, I don't know, they could all produce carrots, or somebody can produce more onions, and we can share between parishes. And we won't get much of that stealing because everybody will feel ownership. Nobody's going to steal from themselves, right? So
there was actually 2 points on there. Bartering is very important for survival. And number 2, sharing is also very important for covering or protecting your own garden.
Yes.
Okay. So when we consider just the concept of sharing itself, some of the greatest parish watch programs comes through people who are sharing. It's not coming together in a building and talking about protecting your side of the community. that that's a program, okay? But when you're actually sharing among the neighbors, going around and talking to the neighbors,
Yes.
that is not a part of life. So within your crossing the street to go to someone's home, you naturally see someone coming in the neighborhood who is a stranger. And your eyes are open. You're looking and observing. We are privileged to have that in my neighborhood.
Yes.
Okay? When my granddaughter goes out into the garden and she picks, and we gave the name to the garden, it's called the Abundant Harvest Garden. In that garden, we grow extraordinary food. That's why it's called the Abundant Harvest. Yeah? But
Oh, I didn't know it had a name.
that's the name of it.
That's an excellent name, yeah.
So she goes afterwards and she takes that food to the neighborhood, like I used to do. She's 13 years old, and she goes to the neighborhood. She doesn't knock on the doors. I said, Karis, just drop him at the door. Just drop him at the door.
How grateful people
Right.
are to receive
Right.
food. And we
So-
know how much fruits and vegetables cost, like right now, that
Yes.
some people can't, they feel like it's very difficult. And people do like fresh.
So-
But as a dietitian, I'm going to say you don't always have to have fresh, but people like fresh.
Miss
And,
Hollis-
and nothing is more that could bring us people together than food, how it connects
Food
us,
brings
right?
And it connects us
Yeah.
together. But just consider this. For one broccoli plant costs $3.75. That is a plant or seedling, a seedling.
Seedling, not
Okay.
seeds, yeah.
So a package of seeds of broccoli costs $1.99.
Yes.
The package of seed
I know you're an advocate for seeds,
The
right?
package
But
of
I
seed
like to see it there.
has
If not,
over
it just takes
has
too long.
over 100 seeds in it.
Yes.
Okay, so what is more advantageous, to buy the seedling or plant from your seeds? I say to people, go down to the nursery and buy yourself some seeds.
Some seeds.
Okay, now there are different types of seeds that one should buy. We get into that another time. But the point is this here, right? I'm about to tell you now. The point is there are heirloom seeds, there are hybrid seeds, there are original seeds, or I prefer the heirloom seeds.
Right. I know
Okay.
you said that. Heirloom, yeah.
Okay, and
Yeah.
they reproduce better for our climate, for this climate within Bermuda. So I would encourage everyone who buys hybrid seeds. They may grow, but it doesn't grow as well as heirloom seeds. So just consider that within your contacts of growing. But the traditional way of growing food within Bermuda goes back or stems back to the earlier development of those who were able to capitalize and understand the importance of how to grow food here.
Yeah.
Okay, now we have hurricanes. How do you survive during the hurricane season, knowing that if you're planting plants that grow out of the earth, right, they can be quickly whipped up,
Yes.
destroyed.
Been burned
So
and
back in the day,
damaged.
Bermudians grew a lot of sweet potatoes. They grew a lot of carrots.
yeah.
They grew a lot of beets. They grew things of which
Were under the ground.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So they had a balance within the context of growing their food. Sweet potatoes takes 4 months, depending on what type it is. If it's 5 fingers, it takes 5 months. If it's
5 fingers, what do you mean?
so there are some sweet potatoes, you may see them like they have like 5 ridges on the leaves. The leaves,
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
they're called 5 fingers.
Okay.
And the round leaves, right? Those they take 4 months. And so most farmers within Bermuda, they plant the 4 months for a higher production, quickly turnover. If you have poor soil, another thought, if you have poor soil, you want to use for a season that is just 3 months, 4 months basically, right? Plant sweet potatoes. Or back in my day, we also planted peanuts.
Yes. I've planted some peanuts before.
Okay.
That was that was an awesome experience.
So
yes.
all of those things, we learned those things. Now, if you're not using any of those things, then this is something which is not really recommended across the board, but you can use a little bit, that's seaweed. I tell folk, don't rape the beach.
Yeah, we
Don't
gotta
destroy
leave
the
some.
beach,
Yeah.
Right. And my thought about this here is always by seeing the beach replenish itself. The beach replenishes itself by the seaweed coming in, the sand comes on top of that, and then it
Yes.
gives it a better cushion. But that all said, though, seaweed, one of the greatest
Yes.
fertilizers.
And people don't realize how
Yeah.
easy that is. It's
Yeah.
just as long as you fertilize the soil, everything will grow, right?
And you should
But
fertilize it every time.
every single time.
Okay, so every time you plant something, just before you plant it, you should fertilize that soil.
Yes. Yes, in order to get what you want. But people think it's so hard. But I
Yeah.
want to go back to something you said. You was talking and I was thinking, you said to buy a seedling is like $3.75. To buy a pack of seeds is $1.29.
$1.99.
99. That's still cheap. But when you go into the grocery store and you're buying some of these imported, it could be like $4.99 a pound.
Well,
And sometimes you get in one head, don't have a family of four, because we talk about in our grow, we save. How much are we talking about that people can actually save by actually gardening
By
and have
gardening.
more food security?
directly. And I don't want to run with that point too far yet, right? But I want to say this to you. It's very important for us to understand economics, because if you want to be able to save money, or at least have money laid aside for your child's investment, education, or otherwise, you need to start thinking about it right now. And it's not like, okay, I've saved this week $60. I can use it for something else. No. You take that money, you set it aside, toward that means of helping your family move ahead, your child, or the advancement of your own household. But that all said, though, is the quality of food that is actually on the shelf versus that's in your garden. Okay, that's a whole different story.
Whole different story.
Right?
Yes.
And I learned some things early in life, and that's not just working with these great farmers within Bermuda, but also in school. I've had the privilege of going overseas and learning. I've had the privilege of working among or with farmers overseas. It's been some wonderful lessons. I'm currently working with the director of agriculture in Tennessee. And I'm so happy to say that she's actually a part of our Grow, Eat, and Save gardening class.
Yes, she is,
right?
and gave some really helpful tips.
Yes. So all of these blessings, they don't just come about but it has some sort of end result toward it. But all that said, though, food security doesn't just deal with having food. It's having the right type of food. Okay, because you can have a whole lot of food, but the quality of the food may not be well. Okay, and so as we're dealing with health here on this point here, you're now causing a risk to the health of those who eat that food by eating poor.
If they don't have good nutritional quality
You see?
access to their food.
Correct.
But we have to make sure that people realize, we've been talking about gardening in just plots of land, but even with our garden competition, we allow for lots of other ways that people can garden. People can do it in containers. There's a lot of things that would grow in containers.
Yeah.
A non-traditional garden.
Correct. You have the vertical
Farming.
And then you have a few other
Hydroponics. Aquaponics.
Yes. So all of those things, they do have their benefits. And I will say to you that there are some countries which are benefiting by them more than others. Canada, for instance, Alaska, some of the African countries, they're benefiting from it, right? But all that said, though, how do we benefit from it? That's the thing of which we need to look at here within Bermuda, because looking at land itself, there is something in comparison to yesterday with today with land. For instance, the land yesterday or years ago belonged to a lot of Bermudians, which they used for farming. As time went on, we saw the change of people building one next to their homes or adding on to their homes, who swallowed up a lot of their land.
Yes.
Then a lot of our woodland land today, which is a lot of Mexican peppers and other stuff, back in the day, they were actually either used for livestock or for gardening. Today, though, a lot of our woodland lands is being cut down for, again, building on homes or building homes. We're causing some other problems, though, because what happens is when we don't have sufficient trees within a nation, then what happens, the clouds that are drawn to that nation by the trees, right, we lose, and that entire place becomes a dry land. Okay, so we have to be balanced, even within the context of how we allow land development and also keeping arable land or land that is open for farming or for poultry. And some of our poultry lands, which are used for meats or for milk, it's poor land. It's poor land.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and I say that very kindly because, for instance, if you go down to Cirrus, that's in Devonshire, that land's a good land, but it needs some rest. The cows are actually on the northern side walking on rock, okay? And so it needs some work done to it. Over the years, the generations of when I was coming up, way back in the day to now, it has literally run down. You don't understand or see it until you know how it was back then, right? And so we need to be able to always feed or put back into what we're taking out of it. You know, it's okay to say I'm feeding these animals. It's okay to say that, you know, I have a business, but what are you putting into that business? And then what comes out of it, it's the end result of either good milk or good vegetables.
Yes.
It's the end of good meat, because back in the day, I grew up among slaughterhouses. We don't have slaughterhouses today.
There's a limit. There's one.
Well, I don't know where that slaughterhouse is, but that all said, though, right, I know that there are some people who do slaughter, right, but I couldn't do it. I had animals, brought up among animals, chickens and other stuff, and I just couldn't do it to my own animals. You know,
That's what I'm saying. People just don't realize
Yeah.
where food comes from. They just see the meat all wrapped up
Yeah.
and it's like, oh yeah, that's where it comes from.
it's a lot involved, right? But
And gardening in and of itself, I think for many Bermudians, it's a lot of work.
Yes.
But it's so rewarding to grow your own, to reduce your budget. I mean, I've had, you seen my garden when I...
you have a big garden.
I mean, I did not have to, I was eating by the season.
Yes.
Only thing I had to buy was rice and meats.
Come on now. Come
And
on now.
everything else, I had potatoes, I had the broccoli. You can get at least two good large heads of broccoli from one stalk.
So
I mean,
let me just share with
we
you.
need Bermudians to do this more. We need food security. It's not something that's gonna go away. And it's weird how things just circle back, like how you talk about how it was before. Things circle back, right back to the beginning, all over again.
It's amazing. A part of my garden, which is in the yard, that's one garden, I use as a science lab. Now, I'm letting a secret out here, okay? Many are asking the question, how do I grow foods the way how I grow them? One of the ways of how I do it is actually I'm using an old method, and then I wake up early mornings. And in one of my mornings, when I woke up about 3 o'clock, I went outside, sat underneath my umbrella tree, which is a cherry tree. I turned it into an umbrella. Okay, but I sat underneath there and I said, Lord, show me how to grow food that can feed youth families. And I'll never forget that particular morning, because from that morning onward, right, the Lord showed me how to plant in a certain way, at a certain time, foods that can be able to grow extraordinary. And he shared with me by a natural process of how to produce every time extraordinary foods. Okay, and I say that to say this, right, that this is not book knowledge. This is something that is not in the book. I'm going literally against the book when all my teachings, but I'm going according to the greatest teacher of earth. Now, I do incorporate my teachings with my natural or my practical ways of how I'm learning, just how to reproduce and do things, which has caused the Grow, Eat, and Save gardening class to exist all this time without any advertisement. We only had one advertisement to that particular class. That was
Yes, we haven't had to advertise ever
Only-
since it started. Yes, yeah.
So there's that is unheard of. I want to close by saying this to you, as we come to a close here. Working the soil is a process of faith. Either side of the fence, however you're working the soil, however you're preparing your family or helping your family to be able to receive good nutrition, food security, it's all a measure of faith. Ships coming into the island, planes coming into the island is a measure of faith. We don't know if that ship would actually come in, but it's a measure of faith that that pilot's going to come in at a set time. It's a measure of faith that we're going to receive that produce from off the docks at a set time. Is a measure of faith that the shops will receive it at a set time. Is a measure of faith that we who would buy it would find it in the shop at a set time. I say to everyone, right, that if you don't have a garden, then start getting some pots. Plant food in pots. Do something positive. Find someone or an organization that can help you toward food security. Call the health department. Tell them, listen, sign me up for the next class.
And that's going to be September.
Would be in
2025.
And so many people have been wondering why then, because next month I'm going overseas for some further schooling.
Okay, wonderful,
And
wonderful.
so it's all about personal growth. It's about upward mobility, so we can be able to help the country further. I'm just so thankful to just be a part of a team. I say a team because we don't do this by ourselves. We have a team that works with us. We have assistants that work with us.
Okay.
We have volunteers that work along with us. And it's a program that I believe that has helped and will continue to help on this island long after I'm gone.
To help them grow their
You know,
own.
yeah.
It's our aim.
Yeah.
So hopefully we'll move towards some other initiatives. With your support, with all that you do. I thank you for attending today and sharing a lot of your knowledge about gardening and helping people to understand how important it is to grow your own and do more.
One last point. We use a very old method, and that is by using the almanac.
Yes, the Farmer's
Okay?
Almanac.
So I would encourage people, if you don't know anything about the almanac, contact me, or just contact someone who knows about how to utilize that almanac that can at least be a springboard to help you produce.
Get started.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chaplain. Thank you, listeners, for tuning in to another episode of Bermuda Health-Abets, a podcast where we discuss everything from A to Z on healthy living. To our listeners, if you have a question you need answered or a topic of interest you'd like to hear on the Health-Abets, you can email healthpromotion@gov.bm. To find more episodes of Bermuda Health-Abets, go to the Department of Health's Facebook page or YouTube channel at Department of Health Bermuda. Like and subscribe. Thank you for listening.
You have been listening to Bermuda Health-Abets. Please note, anything you heard on this podcast is not a substitute for visiting your healthcare provider. If you have a topic or want a question answered, please contact the Health Promotion and Wellness Office of the Department of Health by emailing healthpromotion@gov.bm or by calling 278-4900. Be sure to listen out for the next episode of Bermuda Health-Abets.